There is an immutable law in the architecture of human organizations, a principle that separates true visionary leadership from simple fragile management. It is the concept of absolute uncompromising accountability. When a collective group, whether it is a society, a corporation, or a professional basketball team, agrees to subjugate their individual free will for the greater good of the system, the leader of that system assumes a sacred duty. The leader becomes the ultimate shield. When the system succeeds, the leader distributes the praise. But when the system fails, when the structure crumbles under pressure, the leader must step to the podium and absorb the entirety of the blame. It is a social and moral obligation. But what happens when the leader refuses that burden? What happens when a head coach actively deflects accountability, ignores the glaring objective failures of veteran players, and instead points the finger at the rookie who is already carrying the weight of the franchise? This is WNBA Pro. And today, we are forcing ourselves to examine one of the most baffling, logically flawed, and deeply concerning post-game press conferences of the entire season. We are breaking down the aftermath of the Indiana Fever's brutal loss to the New York Liberty. But we are not just looking at the box score. We are dissecting the exact moment head coach Stephanie White chose to publicly blame Caitlin Clark for the structural collapse of the offense, while completely absolving Kelsey Mitchell's isolation-heavy, momentum-killing choices. If you want to understand the psychology of a failing locker room, you do not look at the players first. You look at the messaging from the top. Following a loss where the offensive geometry completely disintegrated in the fourth quarter, the media naturally asked questions about execution. The answer provided by the coaching staff was not a masterclass in accountability. It was a masterclass in misdirection.
Stephanie White, the bonehead, has no idea where to turn, y'all. This lady's punch drunk out there. She's like punch drunk. She don't know what's going on. She don't know what to do. Check this out.
Steph, I see you circling stuff. I'm guessing the free throws will probably be in a circle. Just talk about the game and how that might have a difference. You held them to 30% shooting and I think 11% from three, something like that.
Yeah, I mean...
When a coach sits at a microphone and subtly, yet undeniably, shifts the narrative to the decision-making of their rookie point guard, they are actively rewriting the reality of the tape. To blame Caitlin Clark for the loss to the Liberty is to fundamentally misunderstand the mathematical and tactical reality of what actually transpired on the hardwood. Clark is the engine. She is the visionary trying to operate within a system that consistently refuses to establish basic foundational spacing. But the most egregious part of White's post-game assessment is not just the unwarranted criticism of Clark. It is the deafening silence regarding the player who actively hijacked the offensive structure. We have to have a very honest, objective conversation about Kelsey Mitchell and the concept of basketball duty. Kelsey Mitchell is a phenomenal explosive athlete. She possesses a first step that can shatter defensive ankles and a relentless desire to score. But scoring points in isolation is a choice, and it is a choice that comes with an immense tactical cost to the rest of the roster. When Mitchell decides to wave off a designed play, ignore the screening action, and plunge headfirst into a one-on-one battle against a set New York Liberty defense, she is breaking the social contract of the team.
Dribbling the ball 97.5 times before she shoots. That's a momentum killer. Kelsey Mitchell refusing to pass the goddamn ball. That's a momentum killer. Aaliyah Boston, $6 million, can't make a layup. That's a momentum killer. You not calling a single play all game for Caitlin Clark. That's a momentum killer. What we talking about? What we talking about?
Stops and we turn it over in a timely manner. And look, their length causes challenges. I mean, we couldn't get C loose very much at all, and we got to do a better job of finding ways to do that.
When you watch that footage, you are witnessing the absolute breakdown of collective duty. The point guard, the player whose entire existence on the court is to read the defense and distribute the basketball to the highest percentage option, is rendered completely powerless. She is reduced to a spectator. And yet, in the post-game press conference, Stephanie White did not utter a single syllable about shot selection. She did not address the momentum-killing isolation possessions that bailed the Liberty defense out of difficult rotations. Instead, she chose to critique the rookie, who was essentially frozen out of the offense during the most critical stretches of the game. This is not just poor coaching, it is cognitive dissonance. How can a head coach demand better clock management and better offensive recognition from a point guard who is not even being allowed to touch the basketball? You cannot blame the architect for a collapsed building if you allowed the construction crew to actively ignore the blueprints. Let us dive deeper into the tactical tape because the tape exposes the hypocrisy of the blame game. When Caitlin Clark does have the ball, The system she is forced to operate within is painfully inadequate. We have analyzed the pick-and-roll data, and the results are staggering. When Clark calls for a screen, the timing is consistently late, the angles are incorrect, and the roll man rarely forces the defense to collapse.
Monique Billings was balling today. Caitlin Clark didn't have the ball in her hands to get Monique Billings shots because Kelsey Mitchell was busy out there jacking up shots nonstop. Why are you not addressing Kelsey Mitchell? Why are you not addressing Kelsey Mitchell? You keep talking about we. Ain't no we. It was one person out there being a damn ball hog. And you talking about, oh, we got to find a way to free up Caitlin Clark. So your idea of freeing up Caitlin Clark is taking her off ball and running her around, which means the ball.
A screen is a physical manifestation of a teammate fulfilling their duty to the ball handler. When that duty is ignored, the ball handler is trapped. For Stephanie White to look at that offensive chaos, a chaos born from a lack of discipline and a lack of structural enforcement from the sideline, and conclude that the point guard is the primary culprit, is a total abdication of coaching responsibility. The psychological toll of this dynamic on a young player cannot be overstated. Caitlin Clark is a student of the game. She understands the geometry of the floor better than almost anyone in the league. She knows the correct pass to make, the correct angle to exploit, and the correct pace to establish. But she is trapped in a paradox. She is given the title of franchise playmaker, but she is denied the absolute authority to actually run the team. She is forced to defer to veteran isolation scores to keep the peace. But when those isolation plays inevitably fail against elite defenses like New York, she is the one left to absorb the public criticism from her own head coach.
But some of them, it's just our team defensive positioning has to be better, and that can take some pressure off to see if we're in the right spots.
Monique, obviously, see 9 minutes, 15 points, and felt like much of the game you were kind of dictating inside. Can you just kind of take me through what was working for you tonight?
This team is a joke, man. I'm going to be completely honest with y'all. This team is a joke. They have no idea what they're doing. I mean, it's a travesty.
I got to the cuts, got to the first half especially.
This dynamic is unsustainable. A locker room is a delicate ecosystem built on trust. When a coach publicly criticizes the player who is trying to execute the system while protecting the player who is actively ignoring it, that trust shatters. It creates a schism. The players who rely on structure, players like Aaliyah Boston and Lexi Hull, become paralyzed, unsure of whether they should follow the point guard or just get out of the way of the isolation scorers. The New York Liberty did not beat the Indiana Fever purely on talent. They beat them because the Liberty operate as a cohesive unit bound by a mutual obligation to one another. Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu do not play selfish basketball. They trust their system and they trust their coach. The Fever conversely defeated themselves. They defeated themselves through a lack of offensive discipline, and they compounded that defeat through a lack of coaching accountability.
The most active on the glass for us. Her cutting was really good. A couple of those opportunities, I felt like she was able to go into the rim because she got out of screens quickly, or because off the ball she recognized open areas. Got to the cuts. She was solid for us on the defensive end of the floor, and her activity was very good. We talked about it pregame. It's going to be finding her way. She's asked to play a different role than she played, a year ago and 2 seasons ago, and most been a bit like it can be.
Front office must intervene. You cannot allow a head coach to systematically break the confidence of your generational asset to protect the feelings of a veteran who refuses to adapt to a team-first philosophy. Stephanie White has to make a choice. She must either enforce the system, demand that the ball moves through Caitlin Clark, and hold every single player accountable for their shot selection, or she must step aside and let someone else establish the law. There is no middle ground when you are building a dynasty. You either honor the duty of the collective, or you die by the selfishness of the individual. This is WNBA Pro. We do not read the press clippings. We read the tape. We analyze the structure, we expose the flaws, and we tell the uncompromising truth of the game. If you respect basketball analysis that goes beyond the surface-level narratives, hit the subscribe button right now. We will see you in the next breakdown.